We talked about security. In the 10 years you served as architect of the Capitol, there were at least three major problems that occurred. Let's talk about your memories and your responses to first the shooting of the two police officers in 1998.
What a tragedy that was. I had known J.J. Chestnut at his door of the Capitol, walked through many times. He was always a very gentle, kind, and professional individual. I really hadn't known Detective John Gibson well at all. He was protecting, I think it was Tom DeLay. When those two officers were killed, as a member of the Capitol Police Board, we certainly had been lobbying for a while for increased numbers of Capitol Police. Basically, there was one officer at each door, and J.J. Chestnut was basically giving directions to a guest, to a visitor to the Capitol at the time that this deranged individual came in, and before he could do anything, he was shot. And then, of course, Mr. Weston went in and had a shootout battle with Detective Gibson. We had had many studies done, the Capitol Police Board and the Capitol Police itself, by outside security organizations telling us what we needed. And they were really talking about 3 or 4 members of the police at each entranceway. Part of the problem is we have so many entryways, a dozen to the Capitol building alone, so many to each individual House office building, Senate office building. To conceive of putting in 4 members of the Capitol Police at every entryway for multiple shifts and over the weekends was just a very daunting issue. I think when I came in, we had something like 1,200 members of the Capitol Police Force. We now have over 2,000, with basically a recognition of the reality that security is a real problem. So we do have 3 police officers at each entrance now, with one standing back and making sure that everything's going well with the people who are doing the inspecting, having other folks, all the visitors go through the magnetometers. So what went through my mind was just horror at the thought that something like this had to happen before the Congress would begin to act on some of the security things that had been recommended for so long. I took part in the funeral corteges for both of these police officers. I went to the churches and the cemeteries where they were buried. And the honor of being part of that cortege and seeing the fire engines on the bridges that we crossed under have crossed ladders, seeing the police forces and the ambulance corps people, all the people in uniform saluting as we went by, was tremendously moving. The honor guards at the cemeteries. These people gave their lives in the protection of the Capitol, of the legislative branch of our government, our democracy. And losing them was a tremendous blow, of course, to all of us. And some of the moving things that were said by members of the Congress were very important, and the subsequent support, in fact, that occurred. We had been underway in planning the Capitol Visitor Center at that point in time. We didn't have the funding. Within 4 months of the murder of these 2 police officers, $100 million had been appropriated to make this project a reality, to begin the project. So that really was part of the initial impetus to make the project a reality. You talked about George White, and early in the 70s, when he was architect of the Capitol, he had talked about visitor facilities. This building, the Capitol building itself, has grown up in 9 increments over its 200-plus years of history. Never planned to have millions of visitors every year. There weren't the restroom facilities. There weren't the places to change a baby's diaper. The Capitol guides competed with each other to try to be heard with the individual groups that they ran through the building. It was not a respectful way to welcome the constituents who elected the members of the Congress, to welcome the visitors from around the world who came to see how our democracy functioned. So the need for a visitor center, the need for security, the need for upgrading a facility that was in parts over 200 years old, the truck docks that were out front where garbage was collected or deliveries made on the west front of the on the east front of the Capitol. That was a terrible sight for the front door of the nation's capital. accessibility for people with disabilities was not adequate because there are so many ramps and stairs throughout the Capitol. Difficult for them to have adequate restrooms and facilities of that nature. So all of these things came to be. The murder of the two police officers with the trigger that was unfortunately necessary to move forward with a plan that George had talked about decades before.